Good evening, everybody. You are watching Truth Uncensored, the podcast where bold conversation meets Christ-centered truth. And boy, have we got a great show for you tonight. Joining me tonight is somebody who has over 20 years of experience in journalism and news writing, and who is now a freelance writer and teaches classes such as digital news writing, media law and ethics, and cross-platform writing at Oral Roberts University. Professor Michael Overall, welcome to Truth Uncensored.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
No problem. All right, so for those people who don't know who you are, just kind of explain your background, what you have experience in, what your religious views are, and what your views on politics are.
I spent most of my career working at the Tulsa World. Something like 25 years.
It's a long time.
Long time. I did news features for them. I wrote a weekly column for I don't know how many years. I lost track. Yeah, I've been teaching at ORU for 10 years. This is my 10th year. What was the other question?
Your views on your religious views and your views on politics.
Okay, well, my religious views. I grew up Pentecostal. In college, I converted to Catholicism. That's not widely known at ORU, so that's outing me as a Catholic. It's not. I mean, I don't hide it.
Yeah.
It's not the common.
So this just in, breaking news,
yeah,
first heard here.
It's not first heard, but I mean, the administrators know. I don't bring it up very often on campus because we're a small minority.
Hey, small minority,
so,
but yeah.
I mean, politics. That meme of my politics in 2016 and my politics.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that meme.
Yeah. So. I think I'm probably one of those like a conservative who's gotten how do you even describe it?
Not more liberal, but like more central.
Oh no, I wasn't gonna say.
Or gotten like more conservative.
Yeah. I mean, like you think. I mean, conservatives have always thought the country's not headed in a good direction. I mean, at least in my lifetime, right?
Yeah.
Conservatives have always said, yeah, we took a wrong turn. We need to correct some things. But now it's like, we need to turn around.
Yeah,
right. We need to backtrack.
So you would say in 2016 you were more kind of like the mainstream conservative beliefs, but now you've gotten like more far right in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, far right's a loaded term.
But like more far right though, like further right than you were.
Like people will take that the wrong way, maybe.
Yeah, people like make you into somebody like Nick Fuentes.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay, well, now before we get into our first official segment, we're going to do something that we do with every guest, which is called rapid fire. So I'm just going to ask you a series of yes or no questions to kind of get a baseline of what you believe on certain things, and we'll get more into these things as the episode goes on. But for these, it's just yes or no. Okay. So for the first one, do you believe that media is mostly trustworthy in today's day and age?
Mostly trustworthy? Yeah, no.
Okay.
Then that pains me to say.
Is bias unavoidable in journalism?
Yes.
Okay.
It is. We're going to talk about. We're going to talk about.
Yeah, we're going to talk about more things. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Do you think social media has made news better?
That's. I mean, that's not a yes or no. I'll go ahead and answer it yes, but there's nuance to that.
Yeah, and we'll get into that.
Okay.
Should journalists strive to be completely neutral?
See, this is one thing. I would have answered easily in 2016, yes, or you should strive to be completely neutral.
Yeah,
there's always been a part of journalism that's been advocacy journalism. It's been a part of journalism.
Oh yeah, of course,
forever. Yeah. It's a legitimate part of journalism. You should if you're presenting yourself as neutral, you should actually be neutral.
Yeah,
I'll put it that way.
That makes sense. All right. Do you think most headlines misrepresent the full story?
No, I wouldn't say they misrepresent the story. I mean, you can't take a 500-word article and give every point or every nuance in the headline.
Okay.
So no, I don't think so.
Has trust in media decreased over time?
Yeah, that's an objective fact that it has decreased. Of course it has.
Do you think journalists have too much influence in the world?
I think we're losing influence.
So you think you have too little influence?
As trust collapses, then you...
So you would say no, they don't have too much influence.
The influence of journalism we've lost it. We've lost a lot of the influence.
Well, is misinformation a bigger problem now than 10 years ago? It's like going back to 2016. I'll say it that way. Is misinformation a bigger problem now than it was in 2016?
Bigger problem. There's nuance in that too. I mean, I would say no, but there's a reason.
Yeah, and again, we'll get into that. These are rapid fire questions. Okay, so now let's actually jump into the first segment, which is just how media works. So obviously, I'm not a journalist, and like a lot of people listening probably have never worked in an actual newsroom or for a newspaper or a news outlet such as CNN, Fox News, or a newspaper. So can you just walk us through, from your perspective as somebody who has 25 years in journalism experience, how does a news story or an article go from an idea to actually being published?
I think what most people don't realize is how independent the individual reporter really is. Like in my whole career, an editor never sat me down and said, you have to write the story this way. Mm-hmm. They would say, we want you to do a story about a certain person or a certain topic, interview certain people maybe.
Yeah.
But no one said, here's the story we want you to write a story that says XYZ.
Like to put this sort of spin on it.
Yeah, no one ever told me that.
Okay.
At the Tulsa World or the other.
That's probably something that a lot of people don't realize. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a very reporter driven profession in my experience. I mean I went out and did I wrote the stories that the way that I thought they needed to be written. I asked the questions I thought needed to be asked, and usually had pretty wide liberty to interview who I wanted. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, it was. I mean, I think they did. I know at one point the Tulsa World got bought by Warren Buffett or by his company, and I would have people email me or call me and say, well, you're just
Warren Buffett's mouthpiece.
Yeah, Warren Buffett told you what to write. Like I don't.
Like I've never met that. Have you ever met Warren Buffett? Question right here.
No, of course not. I mean, I'm like no. Even my immediate editor didn't tell me what to write. It's the owner of the corporation, but yeah. So it's much more individual.
Yeah.
That's why people ask you you ask trust in media.
Yeah.
Can you if somebody says, can you trust a certain newspaper?
Yeah. It's really can you trust the people writing the stories?
Yeah, I mean, it's because it's so different. Like at any newspaper, you've got a whole mix of different personalities and viewpoints.
See, I didn't realize that, and that might just be because I've always been of the opinion that if you work for a mainly liberal newspaper, then if I as a journalist were to write a story, then they're gonna make me put a certain spin on it. But you're saying that doesn't exist.
Well, yeah, but see, the thing is, you probably wouldn't work there. That's the problem.
That's fair.
It's it's not so much why do all news why does the news media toe the same line?
Yeah.
So many stories will kind of fit together. It's not because there's some secretive organization sending out the memo to write the story.
That makes
sense. It's that they have all hired people who think the same way.
Yeah,
and so you're getting the same story.
So, and you probably, if in your interview process, if you were honest, you probably wouldn't get hired there.
I got hired at the Tulsa World as an obit writer, so nobody cared what I thought about
what's an obituary?
Like when people die.
Oh, okay.
Right. So when a person died, you'd get the lowest ranked reporter in the newsroom is the person putting together the death notices and the weather forecast.
Do you ever in the case of obituaries, do you normally write those or does the family kind of write them and tell you what they want put in there?
Well, back when I was doing it, we would write them. You would call the funeral home or the widow or somebody.
But you would talk to them before.
Yeah.
So who ultimately decides what gets covered in a newspaper? So obviously, you said, reporters and journalists have a lot of influence over how they write a story, but who ultimately decides what stories get written?
I mean, it was collaborative at the Tulsa World, at least. I mean, I could go in and pitch ideals, and some of them would be taken and some of them wouldn't be.
Yeah.
But the editors get together and sit around a table and talk about what they want for the day.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then how much, so once a story gets written, obviously it has to go through an editing process. Everybody has an editor. How much influence do editors actually have over the story? How much can they change? What can they change or what, obviously I assume that they can't go in and change your entire story.
Oh boy. Some are more heavy handed than others.
Okay.
Can they change your whole story? I tell my students at ORU, when we talk about editing, the painful reality is it's not your story. You wrote it.
That's fair.
But
it belongs to the paper.
It belongs to the person paying you to write it, or the organization paying you to write it. So ultimately, if they want to change something, they change it, right? Because it's their story.
So how would that work then, like in terms of legality and lawsuits? So let's say they told me to go and write a story about this person. I went and wrote the story. I bring the story back. They make a bunch of changes, and I don't want them to make certain changes. And they say, well, it's not your decision. And then I decide to go and take what I originally wrote and post it on my personal blog. Like, is that? Am I going to get lawsuits for that or no?
I don't know if you'll get lawsuits. You might not have a job.
Yeah.
The next morning. I don't know. I never had much of a problem with it, to be honest. Like, most editors have been very reasonable.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing.
But I mean, it is, a good editor will let you argue back if you feel strongly about a certain change.
Yeah. Have you had a mix of good editors and bad editors, or have you most had good editors?
Oh yeah, I've had a mix. But don't get me started. Yeah, there's good and bad everywhere.
I agree.
But I mean, most editors are, I think, especially after you've kind of established yourself in a newsroom and you've got your own reputation, they kind of back off a little. I didn't have stuff really rewritten to a point where it bothered me.
That makes sense. All right, so now we're going to get to how media and news and newspapers and all that stuff gets into shaping politics and culture. So what role do you think the media is supposed to be playing or should be playing in shaping political opinion?
Oh, this is... I had a professor when I was studying journalism who said a newspaper is supposed to be like a mirror, and you hold it up to the community you're covering, right? Mm-hmm. So... a mirror is just honest, right? It doesn't, I mean, you might like what you see in the mirror or you might not like what you see in the mirror, but that's what it is, right?
That makes sense.
So I think that's my ideal of what journalism should be doing.
So journalism and media should not be shaping political opinion. They should be reflecting what the political opinion is.
Or the political opinions.
Yeah. No, So like if you have a news outlet in Los Angeles, California, their newspaper and what they're talking about is going to be a lot different than somebody in Tulsa, Oklahoma, because the political atmosphere is so different.
Yeah, and I mean, there's going to be a variety of political opinions in a community.
Yeah,
and the media should reflect that variety. Like, it shouldn't be. There's going to be a lot of opinions in a good newspaper that I disagree with.
Yeah.
Right.
But it doesn't make it a bad newspaper.
Yeah, right. It might make it a good newspaper, because if that's the opinion that is going around in the community, then I should know about it.
Exactly. Yeah. So now that kind of jumps right into my next question. So I asked you what role that you thought media should play in shaping political opinion. You said that you think it shouldn't be shaping; it should be reflecting. It should be a mirror of what you actually see. So now, that's what it should be. So now, the media of today, do you think that media for the majority influences culture, or do you think it reflects it?
I think it's trying less and less successfully to influence it.
Okay, so you don't think it's successful?
No, I think it's... I mean, because like as the trust in media erodes, people are turning away from it. Readership is collapsing, and people are seeking they're getting their information. Either they're not getting the information, or they're getting it from alternative sources. Yeah. And so the established media is imploded as the trust is eroding away.
I think you also have to look at the demographics, because if you look at the majority of people in this country who vote, and the majority of people that make the decisions that we make by voting, the majority of the people voting, at least in what I've done research on, it is not the 18 to 30, it is the people who are 45 to 60. And would you say the older demographic, because I would say, at least from my experience, the people I know, not just including my parents and my relatives and my grandparents and stuff like that, but a lot of the older community, they either watch Fox News or they watch MSNBC and CNN, and that defines their entire narrative. So would you say it's still majority not working, or would you say it depends on the demographic? I
think it's a shrinking demographic.
I would agree with that.
That's tied to mainstream media. And I mean, I worked at the Tulsa World for 2.5 decades and watched the circulation numbers go steadily downward.
Like, would you say it's just the numbers, or would you say it's also like the number of like employees? Because I feel like newspapers have a lot less employees now than they did before.
God, it's shocking. It's shocking.
If you had to average me right now, like when you first started at the Tulsa World and when you left the Tulsa World, how much people in the newsroom shrunk? Like, what did it go down by?
It probably went down 20. It was maybe 15 or 20% of what it was when I got there.
In 20 years, that's crazy.
Yeah, and really, I mean, the layoffs started in 2008, and then by 2023 is when I was thrown overboard. And
so did you quit or retire, or were you actually fired from that, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, laid off, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Did you get notice that they were going to lay you off, or was it just like, did it just happen?
I got caught. I was on furlough. You know what furlough is?
I do not.
So when they can't make, basically they give you a week or 2 weeks vacation, unpaid, right?
Mm-hmm.
They just say, we're not going to pay you for 2 weeks. Everybody was taking their turn, not getting paid for, I can't remember if it was a week or 2 weeks or whatever it was.
Dang.
But basically, I mean, that's called a furlough, right?
Yeah.
So I'm on furlough and I get a call.
Like, hey, don't come back.
Yeah, you're not, like, the furlough's now permanent.
That's...
And you want to know the first thought, because when you've been at an organization and you've watched it shrink, all your friends have already been laid off, and you know it's coming.
So you kind of at least you've been preparing, like, the mindset.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people, when you're on the Titanic, you're going to get wet. You don't know exactly when the water gets to you, but you're going to get wet.
Yeah.
And so you're not like when the water finally gets to you, it's like, it's not a surprise.
No.
Like you didn't necessarily think it was going to come this morning, but you knew it was coming. And my first thought was honestly my first thought was, well, thank God I don't have to worry about all these deadlines anymore. Right? Because I was really stressed. Because I thought being off, when you're off a week, like all your work is just piling up on you.
Yeah.
So when you go back, you're going to have this stack of stories to work on. And my first thought, and I was stressing about that, and I mean immediately I just thought, okay, I don't have to worry about this.
So it's like, how long have you been out of the newspaper industry? Like, how long have you not worked for the Tulsa World?
April 2023.
So since April 2023 until now, besides like freelance writing, or maybe it's just freelance, like what have you been doing? Like what does your career look like besides ORU since 2023?
Yeah, just freelancing. And
is that like writing articles, or is that like writing like actual books?
Some books, yeah, both for me. I've done both.
So have you ever written a book like by you, or do you like ghostwrite books for other people?
Yeah, I'm writing for other people.
That's cool.
I mean, they'll pay me for it.
They'll pay you for it. You might as well do it.
And no one will pay me to tell them about myself. But
hey, you should try. You should write a book.
Well, now that I do this podcast.
Yeah, you write a book. Yeah. Okay. So now getting back to media and political and stuff, how much power do you think media and newspapers actually have?
Yeah, less every day and less than they think.
That's a good way to put it. All right, getting into the next segment. This segment I call accuracy versus bias. So first of all, do you think that, obviously you said bias is unavoidable in media. Do you think that overall a newspaper or a news outlet's number one priority should be to be accurate, or do you think their number one priority, like a mix, should be like be accurate but also please our listeners? Like if our listeners aren't going to want to hear this, we shouldn't tell it.
Can ask me that question again?
No, you're good. So, do you think that a newspaper or a media outlet's number one priority should be to be accurate, or do you think it should be to please their listeners or readers?
It's not an either or, because like that's how I teach news writing here, is that you've got to do both. Right?
Yeah, but which one should be more important on the totem pole? It's like, obviously you have to do both, but which one should be the most important? Should accuracy be the most important, or should, like, because obviously you want to be accurate, but if your number one priority is not your readers and listeners, then if you don't have readers and listeners, you won't have a newspaper.
Yeah. Well, but you're not going to have readers if you're not accurate. So,
true.
Like, in my news writing class, I tell people the number one rule of journalism: be fair and accurate.
Okay, that makes sense.
The number two rule of journalism,
I agree with that.
The number two rule of journalism is don't be boring.
I agree with both of those, and I think accuracy, yeah, I agree with that. Fair and accurate should be the number one. Now that we've established, again, like the last segment, now that we have established what it should be, do you think that media and newspapers today are doing their best to be accurate, or does bias play a bigger role?
Bias is playing a bigger and bigger role.
Okay.
In the media.
Why do you think that is?
And that's painfully obvious.
Why do you think that is?
It's a changing attitude within journalism as far as what we are trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think it goes back to like it goes back to like the mirror, the analogy, and that it's not mine. It's a common analogy, but so if I hold up a mirror to the community, I'm just showing you what you are, and there's going to be some good things, there's going to be some bad things, things to work on. But here's a picture of what things are really like, right?
Yeah. And
then the community itself can decide, should we do something about this? Should we clean this up, or should we work on this other thing? They can make their decisions based on what they're seeing in the mirror.
Yeah.
I think there's more and more people in journalism don't see their job to be a mirror anymore. Like their job is to they have an ideal of what the image should look like, and their job, as they see, is to move things in that direction. They want to change the image to their own liking.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So obviously we've already established it, as you said, an objective fact that media, like the distrust in media, is going down by the day. Why do you think that is? Why do you think people feel so misled and mistreated by the media?
Because the mirror isn't showing them what they know should be there, right? And the mirror can't lie for too long before you figure out that
you're being lied to.
Yeah, right. You say, wait a minute, I don't really look like that. The truth is, it could fool you for a little while, but
the truth always comes out.
Ultimately, you start to figure out that, wait a minute, this is not the experience I'm living through.
Yeah.
Right. What I'm seeing in the media doesn't match what's happening in my day-to-day life.
Yeah. So do you think the distrust in the media is justified, or do you think that people are blowing it out of the water?
Can I say both?
Yeah,
because
just give like a nuanced view.
The vast majority of stories that I've written in my career are not about anything remotely political or controversial.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of like a restaurant opening, or
just like
a road being repaired or something that's not, So 90% of journalism is probably not. It's not the kind of story that anybody.
But it's the 1% that people see.
It's the 10% or whatever percent it is that people latch onto that is biased.
Yeah. I think that same like taking that and putting that into perspective for like people. So obviously like 90%, like you said, of news and media is about things that are not controversial, are not remotely like there's a bunch of division on it. But the 1 to 10% that people see is that's what it is. I would say the same thing applies to a figure such as Nick Fuentes, who like 90 to 95% of what he talks about during the 3-hour episodes on his show and what he covers is most just general news and media. It's not remotely controversial, but the 1 to 5% that people are seeing in the vast majority of clips on Instagram is the stuff that people latch onto. And I feel like that's why you can have a distorted opinion not only of the media but also of people, because the 1% that you're seeing, you're not getting the full picture.
Yeah. Well, there's this well-known phenomena that readers do perceive. The more passionate a reader is about a certain topic, the more likely they are to perceive bias when the media covers that topic.
Yeah.
Because if you're exposed to something, well, it's like confirmation bias. If you're exposed to some thought that conflicts with your own, and you feel especially passionate about this opinion of yours, and somebody is presenting you with evidence that might conflict with that,
or just be the complete opposite.
Right. So then people will just push back, emotionally and mentally about that. So they will perceive bias when that isn't necessarily there. So in that way, the public can kind of exaggerate how much bias there is. Mm-hmm. That's not to say there isn't bias, because there is, but I do think that the public can kind of
Yeah.
can perceive it, even because what a lot of people are looking for is affirmation, right?
Absolutely.
They want
yeah.
media to just tell them what they want to hear.
They don't want to. Yeah. They don't want what they need to hear. They want what they want to hear.
Right.
So now getting into the next segment, I think this is actually the name of one of the classes that you teach, but it's called Media Law and Ethics, getting into the legality and ethics portion of media. So what's something that a journalist legally can or cannot do that might be like a misconception of the public that has the opposite opinion?
Oh, jeez. I don't know, are you talking about like a libel situation or a privacy situation?
Obviously, there's legal standards for every job. Like people that sell firearms have certain laws and regulations they have to follow that certain people might not understand. So like for people who aren't in the journalism world, don't work in news or journalism, what are some like legal things, like things that you guys cannot do for legal reasons that the public might not know about or understand?
Well, journalists have to follow the widely applicable laws, right? We're not exempt from widely applicable laws. So a journalist can't go somewhere that the average citizen isn't allowed to go, or you don't have access to records that the general public doesn't have access to. You might know better how to go about getting them, right? But you're not allowed to see things that the just anybody can't go in and ask for the same record.
So given that, then I'll take that and I'll apply it to something that happened fairly recently. It's pretty controversial in the news world, but it's the issue of Don Lemon and the ICE protest at the church.
Yeah.
So with that situation, do you personally think he did anything illegal or against the law by what he did, or is he somehow exempt because he was just recording it?
Well, okay, there's two issues here, right?
Okay.
I mean, one is, was he just recording it, or was he participating in the protest, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious he wasn't functioning purely as a journalist.
No, absolutely
right?
not. I mean, I can see that, but a lot of the world can't see that,
well,
apparently.
I mean, he was an active participant in the protest. He wasn't an objective.
So why isn't he being treated the same as all of them then?
Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's an excellent question, actually. I mean, a journalist could have covered that event, and journalists had a right to cover,
but not
protest
while
like
not
that.
participating
but,
in it.
There was the case of the nuclear power plant protest here in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, so I mean that was kind of a landmark case where some protesters went over a fence to protest construction of a
yeah, I remember that.
And the journalists who went with them, they got charged with trespassing too,
as they should have.
Along with the protesters.
Yeah.
And the journalists who stayed on the right side of the fence didn't get charged. I mean, at some point you can't break the law.
Yeah.
To cover people breaking the law, right?
True.
Like, I can cover a bank robbery. I cannot go into the vault with the bank robber.
Obviously,
right?
yeah.
So,
all right, so that's a good legal representation. Now, what about ethics? So what are just general ethical boundaries that you would say the majority of journalists adhere to?
The ethical boundaries.
So obviously ethics being different than legal is just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Obviously there are outliers and exceptions to every rule, but in general, what are some ethical policies and boundaries that most journalists you would say adhere to, even though they don't have to?
They don't have to legally.
Yeah.
I think generally the one that comes to mind is not deceiving a source. I mean, it happens. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Like people.
So everything that's done by Project Veritas.
Yeah, I mean, most journalists are not going to go there, right? Like if I'm going to interview somebody, I tell them why, what the story really is, why I want to talk to you. I'm not going to seek.
That makes sense.
Most journalists would. I think most journalists are kind of. Appalled by this. Yeah.
So with that situation, do you personally think he did anything illegal or against the law by what he did, or do you think that he should have been treated the same as all the other people there, or is he somehow exempt because he was just recording it?
Well, okay, there's two issues here, right?
Okay.
I mean, one is, was he just recording it, or was he participating in the protest, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious he wasn't functioning purely as a journalist.
No, absolutely
right?
not. Yeah, I can see that, but a lot of the world can't see that.
Well,
apparently,
I mean, he was an active participant in the protest. He wasn't an objective.
So why isn't he being treated the same as all of them then?
Yeah, why?
Okay.
I think that's an excellent question. Actually, I mean, a journalist could have covered that event, and journalists had a right to cover,
but not
protest
while
like
not
that.
participating.
But, there was a case. I don't. Did we talk about this semester? I can't remember if I brought it up, and I think I did. The case of the nuclear power plant protest here in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, so I mean that was kind of a landmark case where some protesters went over a fence to protest construction of a
yeah, I remember that.
And the journalists who went with them, they got charged with trespassing too,
as they should have.
Along with the protesters.
Yeah.
And the journalists who stayed on the right side of the fence didn't get charged. I mean, at some point you can't break the law.
Yeah.
To cover people breaking the law, right?
True.
I can cover a bank robbery. I cannot go into the vault with the bank robber.
Obviously,
right?
yeah.
So,
all right, so that's a good legal representation. Now, what about ethics? So what are just general ethical boundaries that you would say the majority of journalists adhere to?
The ethical boundaries.
So obviously ethics being different than legal is just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Obviously there are outliers and exceptions to every rule, but in general, what are some ethical policies and boundaries that most journalists you would say adhere to, even though they don't have to?
They don't have to legally.
Yeah.
I think generally the one that comes to mind is not deceiving a source. I mean, it happens. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. People.
So everything that's done by Project Veritas.
Yeah, I mean, most journalists are not going to go there, right? I'm not. If I'm going to interview somebody, I tell them why, what the story really is, why I want to talk to you. I'm not going to seek.
That makes sense.
You. Most journalists would. I think most journalists are kind of appalled by those tactics.
That makes sense. Now, this might be something that could be useful for the public or people that aren't journalists, but what are some things that journalists can get sued for?
In the United States,
yeah,
it's very hard to sue a journalist, thankfully.
Sorry to anybody out there that wants to sue a journalist.
Yeah, I mean, we go into this in media law class, but the First Amendment's a very broad protection.
And the press is actually mentioned in the First Amendment.
Yeah, and truth is an absolute defense. So I mean, if I can say whatever I want about you, if it's true, there's absolutely nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if it's not true, in theory, you can sue me as a journalist, but the burden of proof is on you.
Yeah.
Right? You have to prove
it's innocent until proven guilty.
But I'm the one being accused of doing something guilty, right?
Yeah. So it's the people that have to prove you're guilty.
I mean, if I say Josh cheated on his math exam, I mean, you can sue me, but you have to prove you didn't cheat on that math exam. How can you?
Exactly.
That's a hard thing.
Whereas in the other way, if a teacher accuses you of cheating on an exam, they can't give you a bad grade unless they can prove you cheated on the exam.
Right.
But that makes sense. So the next thing I want to ask, so if you had to pick one thing, what is the most misunderstood thing about the public when it comes to media ethics?
Oh, wow. The most...
Something that's widely misunderstood that you think that you would say the majority of the people think, but that's actually not true.
I think that the bias is subconscious.
Yeah.
Most of the bias that goes on, I'm not excusing it, but I think if you confront a journalist about being biased, they will not know what you're talking about, right? In 99 out of 100, 99% of the time, they will say, "I'm not being biased. I'm just telling it like it is," even though you see the bias, right,
mm-hmm.
the reader.
Yeah.
But that's because the bias is subconscious, which I don't know how much you want to get into that.
No, that makes sense.
I think the general public thinks it's more deliberate than it actually is.
All right. So this next segment that we're going to get into is called Hot Takes. So I have basically gathered up some general hot takes that I would say most of the public might believe or think about journalism and the media, and I want to read them to you and get your opinion on them to see if you think they are true, aren't true, like what your take is on them. Okay. So the first take is the media pushes narratives more than truth.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
There's nuance in that too, but
I mean, you can give on nuance if you want. Like,
oh, I thought it was a strictly.
No, it's not. It's not. Yes, no. It's I'm gonna read something and I want to get your take on it. Just
okay. I mean, again, it's like the vast majority of day-to-day stories are routine city hall kind of stories. That where you're not, quote unquote, pushing a narrative, but I think a lot of mainstream journalism has turned into pushing narratives. Yeah.
The second take is objective truth when it comes to journalism is dead.
No, it's not dead. I think it's maybe popping up in other places. It's kind of like like when the prairie burns, the new grass starts springing up, and we're seeing some of that in journalism. It's just there's a lot of good journalism being done out there. It's just not in the places where you used to find it necessarily.
All right, the next one is journalists have too much influence.
No, like I said, I think journalists are losing their influence.
So you think that's just like opposite, like the public opinion is not correct on that one?
I think it's a diminishing. I mean, I've seen it diminish just locally, right?
Yeah.
25 years ago, being on the front page of the Tulsa World was a big deal. You could shape local public opinion with a front page article. Not now. Nobody, not anymore. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. All right, this is the last one. So this is kind of going to get back to, so in the rapid fire questions, one of the questions I asked you was, do you think social media has made journalism better? And your answer was yes.
Yeah, because it's created new places for journalism.
Okay, so now this is the take, and this is kind of, I think it's a very good mixture, because like obviously, so when you answered yes on that question, were you kind of thinking of news outlets and media outlets being able to post their stories and post things on social media, or are you talking about other people like you and me, like really the idea that anyone can be a journalist these days and post things on social media?
I mean, Josh has a podcast. Right?
True. Yeah.
You couldn't do this in a previous lifetime.
No.
Like when I was your age, this was not an option.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so this is the take then. It says social media has made a mockery of journalism and has made journalism much less trustworthy.
Yeah, because I'm going to go back to that mirror analogy. I'm beating it to death.
No, it's all good. It's a good analogy.
If I'm holding up a mirror and you're seeing an image of yourself in this mirror, and somebody else comes along and holds up a different mirror, and you're like, wait a minute, why do I look different in this mirror than I look like? You know what I mean? Like, you think, oh, wait a minute, this mirror is showing me a slightly different picture than I'm seeing in this mirror. Yeah, and I think that's where that's where the trust begins to diminish, and the influence, because you like, if I'm not getting an accurate image from this place, I'm not going to look at it anymore. I'm going to go look at this image instead. That's telling me more of what I'm actually experiencing in life.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so this next segment is a segment that I do with every guest. It's called Guest Choice. So basically, it can be about anything. So if there's anything that we haven't talked about related to this topic, or the topics or like the whole idea of media and journalism that we haven't discussed that you would like to discuss, or if there's anything that we already discussed but you wanted to get more into a certain topic, you can pick basically anything and we can talk about it.
Okay. Something I've been thinking a lot about in my own head lately.
All right.
Is journalism being murdered, or is it committing suicide?
Oh, I have not thought about that before.
I've tried to, like, it's one of the changes maybe.
Yeah.
In my own thinking, because I think 10 years ago I would have said journalism is being murdered.
Yeah.
Like, but what I mean is, like, outside forces are
going back to
doing damage to the profession that the profession was having trouble controlling.
Yeah. It's going back to like what you believed in 2016 versus what you believe in 2026.
Yeah. So I mean, I think in 2016 I would have said journalism was kind of, or being a journalist in 2016 was kind of like being a blacksmith in the year 1905 or whatever, because technology was changing and the business model was changing, and we were trying to cope with that and trying to figure out, how to fix the business model and how to live in a new technological age. But those are forces that we're not controlling. That's stuff that's happening to journalism. Right. And I think now, 10 years later, I'm not so sure it hasn't been a suicide.
I think I probably agree with you that because like you look at what they're like, and not even just newspapers, but like news outlets like Fox News and CNN. Like it used to be like even 5 years ago, like right before the pandemic happened, like 2019, 2020, 2021. Like my dad would watch Fox News every night, and it wasn't because he was just only wanted his viewpoint put. It was because it actually gave more of a balanced viewpoint. But now Fox News is just biased for far right, and CNN is biased for far left, and like there's no and they're doing that to themselves,
right? And meanwhile alienating half the potential audience.
Exactly.
Right?
That's I agree with that wholeheartedly. Okay, so this next segment is another segment that we do with every guest, and it's called the disagreement segment. So basically, and this does not have to be related to this at all. This can be about anything. Just what's belief that you have on something that you think a majority of people, including people in your own circles, would disagree with you on.
Oh man, the thing that popped into my head is being Catholic. I mean, we're at ORU, and that's not the.
Okay, well then let's do that.
I mean, I don't know if that's maybe more sensitive than you wanted me to say, but
no, I think it's great. I think, trust me, in previous episodes, I've had much more insane, and that's why it's called Truth Uncensored. Okay. We talk about
what if people said before.
Huh?
What are the things that people have said before?
People have talked about how 6 million people did not die in the Holocaust. But yeah, it's gotten from that. It's gotten to and again, that's the purpose of this is we foster any discussion about anything and everything uncensored. There's no censorship here.
Yeah, okay.
So being Catholic, why do you think that's such a something that most people like Christian community would and people at ORU would disagree with? Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know if I would say they disagree with it as much as it's just like it's
not the norm.
It's not the norm, and every once in a while, I've had students say something about something like I don't know. So just every once in a while, people making comments like, well, they're Catholic, they're not Christian, they're Catholic or something.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Like, okay.
I wholeheartedly disagree with that as well, because I mean we all know anybody who's a genuine Christian. I don't even like to use the term Christian anymore. I use the term Christ follower, because the term Christian and the term Catholic has been so watered down. Like there's people like Piers Morgan that call themselves Catholic but openly support the LGBTQ community and will go on 60-day sabbaticals from their wife and have like all these things. Like people that use the term Christian to hide behind that don't even believe it. So for me, I don't think it matters what sub-thing you're in. I don't think it doesn't matter if you're Protestant, Catholic, Pentecostal, or me. I'm non-denominational. If you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and you make it your life's goal to follow him and follow the teachings of the Bible, I don't think it matters what denomination you are.
Yeah, I think there's that's interesting, because I think there's a kind of a realignment happening on a very grand scale within the church, and
absolutely.
The church, like all Christians.
Yeah.
Because like for the past 500 years or so, it's been Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant.
Exactly.
That's the main dividing lines. I think that's changing. It's changing.
Oh, it is. 100%.
So it's changing so slowly where those distinctions are mattering less and less.
They are. And I'm going to bring up Nick Fuentes again. People like him, like he uses the term, he calls himself a Christian in one episode, calls himself a Catholic. Like he uses those terms interchangeably. So I feel like people that are raised, I think it's really about how you were raised. Like even you said you weren't raised Catholic, but you converted to Catholicism. But really, did you really convert that much? I mean, like you're still a Christ follower. You go to a Catholic church and not a Protestant church. Like, would you say that a majority of your beliefs changed when you became Catholic, like your core beliefs, or was it really just like what made you convert to Catholicism over Protestant?
No, I never looked at it as changing beliefs at all. I always looked at it as deepening my faith and kind of growing.
So you would say in general,
growing in the faith more than.
So you would say in general, Catholics have a deeper belief or faith than Protestants do, in general, in your opinion?
No, well, no, I wouldn't put it that way.
Okay.
I think there's a deeper, richer faith to be had there with the Eucharist and with being grounded in history of the church and the liturgy.
So,
but it's not what I would say like a better quality faith necessarily.
Yeah. What would you say? So I feel like the main, and this is the main criticism I heard growing up, but I've actually done a significant amount of research and study on this. Like my parents and my pastor, like when we would talk about Catholics, the main criticism of Catholicism and the reason why they would say, like you said, people say they're Catholic, they're not Christian, is because you guys have extra books in the Bible, in addition to what the normal Christian Bible has.
Yeah, I mean, Catholics would say it the other way around, right? You would say
we have
you're missing books.
Yes, and I actually I'm actually like I don't fully agree one way or another, but when I was doing research, I didn't realize that before Martin Luther translated the Bible that the Catholics use is the Bible that all Christians used. Yeah. It was the Bible used in the early church, and then when Martin Luther translated it, he was like, these books aren't needed. These books, and like, who gives a human the right to deem that? Like, so I'm starting to believe like maybe we are missing books. Yeah. And I feel like Christians aren't discounting the meaning of the books. Like what I've heard from my pastor and even my parents and other people is they'll say that the books, it's not that the books aren't good or that the books are false teachings. It's that they think that the Bible that we use is the Word of God, and the extra books that you guys have are not the Word of God. They're just important things that were written by a human hand, and they only want to be reading the quote unquote word of God. But I don't understand how that's the case when for the first hundreds of years of the early church they used that Bible.
Right. Well, that raises the question of who decides, right?
Martin Luther.
Who has the authority to decide what's in the Bible and what's not in the Bible?
So another question that I have for you, and this is like something that I will ask Catholics, because different Catholics believe different things. Do you believe that Mary was sinless? Do you believe that Mary never sinned?
Yeah, that's a Catholic doctrine.
So
that's not like a.
But I'm talking about you personally. So you personally believe that Mary never sinned?
Yeah.
Why is that? Because that's shocking to me. Because I think that's false. But I'll give you a chance to explain that.
It's not a Protestant.
Well, I'm not Protestant either. Right? I'm non-denominational.
It's not a Protestant belief. But
why is that? Where does that come from?
Okay, I should have prepared my sermon in advance. Okay, so
there's no judgment here. Like I said, I don't identify with any denomination. I'm open to all of it.
I'll look at it this way: Christ was the new Adam. Mary was the new Eve. Adam and Eve were sinless. They both made a choice to sin, right? They had a choice. Okay. They chose wrong. Okay,
first of all, let me ask you, so this is just a question, because a lot of people, like there's a lot of division on this topic. Do you know what replacement theology is?
Yeah, with Judaism?
Well, it's both. It's replacement. It's the idea, because that's the only other place I've heard that term. Jesus is the new Adam and Mary is the new Eve. The only place I've heard that is in the replacement theology doctrines. They also say that Christians like replace Jews. So would you say that you agree with replacement theology or no?
Well, it's not a matter of replacing anyone. There's a straight line. Mm-hmm. The Messiah was promised.
Yeah.
The Messiah came. Messiah was accepted.
Yeah.
By the people who accepted him. That's the straight line.
True.
The people who turned aside were not the ones who accepted the Messiah. And the ones who didn't accept the Messiah was the
therefore and those people would you say those people are no longer the quote unquote chosen people? They rejected, because you have that straight line where before Christ it was kind of all mixed in, like it was worshiping God, it was sacrifices, it was a very hard mix of religion and the law. But when Christ came, it's not that the law went out the window, but it's not about religion anymore. It's not about sacrifice. It's about relationship with Christ. And Christ, a lot of people say Christ came to bring peace to the world and to unite the world. No, Christ came to divide the world. He came to divide and put a straight line down and say, you're either with me or against against me. And Paul said this, when he was talking about when God told Abraham, all of your descendants will be, he said, not all of your descendants will be my people. Not all of your descendants will be the chosen people, but those who choose me. And it was following God and choosing to believe in him until Christ came, and then it became choosing Christ. So would you say that following that straight line, that in the day that we live in now, I would personally say there is no chosen people. But if you're going to say there is a chosen people, then wouldn't the chosen people be those who choose Christ?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there are chosen people.
The Christians.
We're
exactly
the church. The church is the chosen.
And I agree with that. And it used to be, and Jesus said in Galatians 3:28, he said, there is no male nor female, there is no Jew nor Gentile, there is those united in Christ Jesus.
Yeah.
So now getting back to what you said. So you said Jesus is the new Adam and Mary is the new Eve. What do you mean by that? Because I've only heard that once before, and that was in the replacement theology.
Well, to restore humanity's original position with God, right?
To make us sinless.
To restore us to the righteousness that God intended for us to be.
But us as humans can never be at the full righteousness of God until we're in heaven.
Well, through the grace of Christ.
Yes, but it doesn't.
I'm a sinner.
Yes.
But through His grace.
Yeah.
My sins can be taken away.
But wouldn't you say the same thing goes for Mary? Mary was a sinner, but through belief in God or her son, she was forgiven of those things, and then that's why she's going. And when she gets to heaven, she will be perfect. But the idea that Mary was perfect for her whole life on earth is mind-boggling to me.
Is it?
Because the Bible even says that Jesus is the only one who was without sin.
Mary had a special grace from God.
Where does the Bible say that, though?
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you.
So is that in one of the quote unquote extra books? Because
that's what the angel said to Mary in the Annunciation. Yeah, the angel appears to Mary and greets her, Hail Mary, full of grace, right?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that just means that she has grace. It doesn't mean she's sinless.
Well,
so that's an interpretation then.
It's an interpretation, I guess.
So you would say you're not saying that that's objective truth. You're saying that that's an interpretation of that verse that you happen to agree with, and that most Catholics agree with.
An objective truth. I think it's the truth.
Okay, what about Jewish people who say that Jesus was a heretic and a blasphemer and he's burning in hell, and they believe that to be truth?
Yeah, and they're wrong.
Exactly, from our opinion. But, the whole point of faith is that we can't prove any of it. We can prove that Jesus lived on earth, and we have records that he died. So, but we don't have proof that he resurrected. But that's the point of faith. I believe it to be true.
You can argue that it's more rational to believe that he is resurrected than that he's not.
True. Right? And so you would also take
it's not. I wouldn't say it's just like this blind, irrational faith.
So you would also take that same logic that says it's more rational to believe that Mary was sinless than she wasn't.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, if you understand her role, in the story, and her role as the new Eve, her role as the tabernacle, her unique place in what Catholics would call the salvation history, the unfolding of our salvation, and the roles that she played as making this unique decision point is kind of the counter to Eve. So
you think Mary represents and was what Eve should have been?
Yeah, that's actually a really nice way of putting it, I think.
Okay.
She got to make the decision the right way, right?
Yeah.
She chose righteousness instead of sinfulness, whereas Eve chose wrong. Mary chose right.
Okay, well, that is a very hot take, and I love that. I personally don't agree with that. I don't think that's true, but I can see the perspective, and I'm going to do more research on that, because that is very interesting. But that's the point. We can agree to disagree on things, but I think I like that, and I think that I was not expecting that for this segment, and I think I like that. That's awesome. Okay, so getting down to the last thing. This is the last thing that we do with every guest. It's a game. It's called One Word Association. So usually it's just a list of people, but for you, since we're talking about journalism and news, there's going to be some news terms put in there as well. So I'm basically just going to say each of the things, and after I say each of the things, I want you to just either, if you had to use one word to describe that thing or person, or the first word that comes to your head, what would the one word be that you would use to describe that thing or person?
I'll try.
All right. CNN.
The first thing that popped in my head, you really want it?
Sure.
Darth Vader.
Okay.
You know why?
Sure. What was the why?
James Earl Jones. I don't know. I mean, that's just, I'm sorry. You said CNN, first thing that popped in my head was
That works.
because it's his voice, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Fox News.
Just a sigh.
What's one? If somebody said describe Fox News in one word.
Blah.
Okay.
Blah. It's just blah.
Okay. Social media.
Opportunity.
Okay. Journalism.
Journalism. Help.
Okay.
Help us. Yeah.
Bias.
Universal.
Okay. Donald Trump.
Mixed. It's just, have
Okay.
good
That's
and
fair.
bad. Good and bad.
Joe Biden.
Gone.
Kamala Harris.
Just wow. First one word to describe her. Pathetic. I can't think of another word.
Okay, that's
just
fair.
pathetic.
Zorhan Mamdani.
Oh wow. Yeah, scary.
Okay. Nick Fuentes.
Misguided.
Okay. Orrin McIntyre.
No, I'm gonna get all the first after.
Orrin McIntyre.
Okay, like that's the meme. The 2016 meme in the 2020. What was your politics in 2016 and your politics in 2026, right? So
Yeah.
like under 2016, my politics would have been something like
But like, what's one word you used to describe Orrin McIntyre? If you describe him in one word.
Insightful.
Okay.
But can I finish my?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, like in 2016, the picture under my politics would have been like something like I don't even know.
Trump, a MAGA hat.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, probably more like a Rubio or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, but in 2016, the picture is whatever Orrin says is.
Okay. Well, you just got me to my next person,
Okay.
Marco Rubio.
Evolving, I think. Whether it's an honest evolution, I don't know.
JD Vance.
Next.
Benjamin Netanyahu.
Foreign.
Foreign.
Right? He's foreign. He's the leader of a foreign nation.
Okay.
What?
That's
Why
fair.
is he?
Foreign works.
Yeah.
Adolf Hitler.
Dead.
Okay. Kanye West.
Ridiculous.
Candace Owens.
Also ridiculous.
Andrew Tate.
Oh, what is he? That like the masculine
Yeah.
guy?
Manosphere guy.
Yeah, manosphere guy. Yeah, just grifter.
Okay. Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, my opinion of him has changed a bit too in 10 years. I mean, obsolete.
JFK.
Imposter? What's that? Imposter's not quite the word I'm looking for. Like
Is imposter the word that you want to use?
Well, I mean, like what's like he's not what he first appears to be.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
That makes sense. Ben Shapiro.
Loud. I don't know.
Matt Walsh.
Interesting.
Okay. Dr. Billy Wilson.
Boss.
Okay. Tucker Carlson.
Confounding.
Okay. And last but not least, Mr. Piers Morgan.
Oh, blowhard.
All right. Well, that is one word association. All right. Well, now, before we end the episode, do you have any final thoughts or messages that you would like to leave with the audience?
Yeah. When you're looking for truth and for reality, right? You have to search for it these days. I think you have to you can't rely on one source or a narrow range of sources. So I guess my message would be seek out a broad range of opinions and viewpoints, and don't be afraid to listen to people you disagree with.
Yeah, I think that's great. And then the last thing, I ask this to every guest, and obviously I'm not speaking this over you, but just like in general, if you were to die today or die tomorrow, like die driving home, and this podcast was the last thing anybody ever heard you say, what would be your one message to the world if this was the last thing anybody ever heard you say?
Follow Christ.
Amen. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast and being willing to do this interview. I think it went very well, and I hope we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, it's been fun. I don't know if I made any sense at all. But
No, you made it. It was great.
Thank you for asking me on.
No problem. If this episode challenged you, encouraged you, or helped you think differently, follow the podcast, leave a review, and share this with someone who you think needs to hear it. Remember, truth matters, discipline matters, faith matters, and your life has a purpose. I'm Josh Cook, and this is Truth Uncensored. We'll see you in the next episode.